Morning. I've got a Zafira C here with what I can only describe as a batshit crazy fault. The fault refers to Adblue pressure. I'm going to show you something, and this is mad. This is the fault we're concerned with here. Reducing pressure sensor circuit low. So if I get the parameters up for it, Adblue Pressure Sensor Circuit, Adblue pressure. So key on, engine off, Adblue system's not running, 0.73, 0.71 of a volt, zero pressure in the system. And if we look at the fault status at the minute, it's a memorized fault. So I can actually clear that fault. So now goes for stored fault. So this is where it gets weird. I can make it do the fault. I'll show you how. Just got the, keep an eye on the voltage. We're just in the boot of the car here. I'm just going to bounce the suspension up and down. So that's the right hand corner. Now up the left hand corner. So I'm going to do it now. The bugger. Try on the front. Sorry for the shaky camera, but I'm bouncing the car. Nothing. On the other front corner. There. See the voltage dropping. So there we go. That's gone to 0.04 of a volt. And if we go to the faults, we've now got an active fault. Now, here's the weird bit. Let's put this down. Get back to parameters and keep an eye on this voltage. So what I'm going to do is, I'm now going to, as the car's on a ramp, it's on a scissor lift, so it's getting lifted by the sills. I'm just going to take the car up. The car's sitting on the ground at the minute. There. Wheels aren't even off the ground, but suspension has raised. And the voltage comes back. This is one weird fault. This is the Adblue tank here. Sits behind the rear bumper on the right hand side, and the wiring for it goes up into the wheel arch here. So we've got the wheel arch laying out. Let's drop it down again. So at first I thought, because there's wiring from the Adblue system comes into this wheel arch, took the wheel arch liner out. As you can see, the wire goes up over the top of the shocker mount here, and then it would appear to go through a grommet inside through the wheel arch here. I thought this wiring might have been getting chafed or something by the suspension, but as you can see, it's all kind of clipped away from the suspension. I can do a wiggle test on it. Let's just tug and pull on this wiring harness. And as you can see, it's having no real effect on that voltage. So I don't think the problem lies there. So the next thing, easiest thing to do is consult the wiring diagram. This is the wiring diagram for it. This here is the Adblue control module. This here is the Adblue pump inside the tank, and part of that pump is the Adblue pressure sensor here. And there's a wiring connection between the Adblue pump and the Adblue control module. So could that be the problem? We'll pull the covers off and have a look. We've also got power feeds to that Adblue control module from this fuse box, which is in the boot compartment of the car, and then we have a connection from the Adblue control module to the engine ECU here. These are the connections here. They're the NOx sensors and the particulate matter sensor on the exhaust. This last one here is the heater circuit in the Adblue line. So I think we've got the pump there, Adblue pressure sensor. These are the heater circuits inside the Adblue tank. So we'll pull the cover off and have a look. So this is the pumping unit here, and in there we've got the control unit. We've got wiring. This is the wiring that comes down from the wheel arch, comes through and plugs onto the control unit, and this short harness here goes from the control unit to the pumping unit. So I think what we need to do is identify the wire at the control unit and basically check the 3 wires to this pressure sensor and see what the hell's going on. I'm going to take the whole cover off the bottom of this Adblue unit, make that easier access. So it's a bit of a better view of it. So we've got the Adblue control module here. This is the wire coming in from the vehicle. So through there will be the NOx sensor wire and the connection to the engine ECU, the powers and grounds. This is the temperature set, the heater circuit in the Adblue line, and then we've got this little short harness here which goes from the Adblue control module onto the fuel pumping module. So we need to identify which of these wires are the pressure sensor wires, and we need to have a look at them and see what the hell's going on. But one thing is, this pump is, this whole Adblue tank is bolted solid to the car, so suspension level is going to have no effect on this wiring here. You see the wiring that go round up into the wheel arch, we've had a good tug and pull on that and had no really effect on that. It's all bolted in, it's solid, and there's nothing where I can see where the height of the suspension is going to have any kind of effect on the wiring at this tank. But as I say, I just want to check the voltages in and out of that sensor and see if I can get my head around it a bit. It's a weird one. Better view of the diagram there. This is the pressure sensor here, and it goes onto the Adblue control module. It pins 12, 14 and 15. Yellow with red, blue with white, green with black with green. And if we look there, 12 there, yellow and red. 14 white and blue, 15 can't really see it, but it is actually black with green. So I'm going to put this back on the car, stick a screw up on it, and take this car up and down on the ramp and see what the hell's happening. Right, so I've got all 3 scope wires connected there. Everything's connected back up. What we have is on the green trace, channel 3, 0, that's for ground. On the blue trace, channel A is at 760 millivolts, so that's going to be our signal. That's what we're seeing on the diagnostic tool. On the red, we have 5.027 volts, which is a 5-volt feed, so it's a standard 5-volt sensor. Now we need to work out, basically, is it a pull up or pull down sensor? So the easiest way to do that is we'll unplug it from here. So as you can see, it's a pull up sensor because now the blue has gone down to ground. So that tells us that the component pulls the voltage up as the pressure rises. So we'll plug that back in there now. And there we go, we're back to where we were before. So I'm now going to drop the car back onto its wheels and start bouncing it again and see what happens. So as you can see, we've got 700 odd millivolts, 700 odd millivolts there. So I'm going to start lowering this ramp. See what happens to this voltage. If anything starts to go, stop it there until it refreshes on the screen. Still at 7.700 millivolts. That's the weight right off it. There. So that's made no difference. So now I'm going to have to bounce each corner and see what happens. Right, I've got my glamorous assistant to bounce. So go on, bounce on that corner. This is the driver's side front. We can see the signal voltage dropping out. Right, let it settle. Let's settle to 0. So again, take the weight off the car, goes back up, put the weight back on the car, drop back down again. Weight off the car, off the wheels. Like I said, batshit crazy fault. Now the turn of the passenger front. Oh, it's dropped out already. Go on, bounce it anyway, Warren. You see if we bounce it, it's coming backwards and forwards. Right, it's kind of dropped out. Right, let it settle. Take it up again. Weight off the wheels. Wheels are still actually on the deck. Just taking the weight off the suspension. Back down. Back to normal. Go passenger rear. Right, bounce it. That's the passenger rear, driver's rear. That's dropping out there. Seems to be on the driver's side. Take that back up again. Watch that cable when done. Do that driver's rear again. It's dropped out there, eh? Like I said, crazy. So as I said, I'm pinned in here, here and here. 14 would appear to be the ground, I believe. 12 is the signal and 15 is the 5-volt ref. So what I'm going to do is, instead of using a battery ground, I'm going to use the sensor ground for the scope to see if the ground is dropping out, and is that what the cause of the problem is it a grounding issue? So back up a height and we'll reconfigure these wires. This is interesting. I'm raising the car now, and every time the ramp hits the locks, it has an effect on that signal. So even a slight vibration through the car, that's me hitting the door. It's having an effect. So this is weird. As you can see, I'll graph that. Walk around the car and hit different parts of the car. So put on the wheel there. Zoom in on that. Hit the wing there. Slightest vibration, we'll go to the other side, see if the other side has the same effect. So, he's zoomed in there, let's hit this door. Hit the car on the B post there. Wheel, slightest vibration through the car. So a bit on the scope. Round. Pull on this wiring while it's connected to the scope. Put the shotter there. It's something to hit it with. I'm going to hit it around where the wiring goes through this grommet with a dead blow hammer. So if we just it's really affecting it. I'm hitting the wire in there. But if I hit the door, open this door, get the dead blow again. Hit the sill. Door over there. It's a double latch. Effect. door with my fist there. One weird fault. So is it the weight of the blocks on the sills? Put the blocks straight on the sills. Just put this car down again. It's faulted when it's off the ground this time. Seeing the locks come out. I've got the weight of the wheels on the ground, but I've just started to lift the sill. So let's refresh its page. It's complete. Level there. Got to be a wiring fault. Right, my green channel is my sensor ground, so I'm going to disconnect that, and I'm going to. I wonder if that's what the vibration's been. That in particularly in there very well. Right, let's see what that looks like. So that's my sensor ground, the green channel. So I'm going to take that away, and I'm going to use a sensor ground to ground the scope. Right, so what I've got is I've got the red channel on the 5-volt reference. I've got the blue channel on the signal. I'm grounding the scope through the sensor ground where what was the green, just to ensure we've got a good ground. As you can see, we've still got a good 5-volt reference there. We're still just over 5 volts, so the ground is good. So we'll keep that on the ground. Right, so we're now using the sensor ground to ground the scope. So I'm going to drop this down and see what 5-volt ref's dropping out. That's interesting. So we've got a ground issue with this. So let's refresh the screen. I think we've got a ground issue. So, based on that, that's when the ramp is hitting the locks and the 5-volt ref is dropping. Bearing in mind, we're grounding the scope through the sensor ground. So have we got a grounding issue here? That's still 0. I'll show it's still 0 on there. Yeah, it's still 0 on there. So So I think the next thing to do is run a ground wire from the sensor ground to the battery ground to make sure that the sensor has a good ground, and see if we lose the signal. Right, so what I'm going to do is, that's the ground wire. I'm going to jump that ground to battery ground by putting that in there. And I've got my power probe extension lead here, and the left is the ground. I'm just going to connect that onto there. So I'm still using the ground scope onto that pin, but I've jumped a battery ground to it through my power probe extension. See what effect that has on the voltages. Right, so jump to a battery ground. We've still got 0 volts on that sensor wire, signal wire. So bring it down. What we're not seeing is the dropouts on the 5 volt. We're also not seeing anything on the signal, and that's also reflected in the live data. I think the next step is to disconnect the pump module, use a sensor simulator, and try and push voltage up that signal wire to see if we see that voltage through the diagnostic tool. Right, I've got some more information on this now. I've basically went on to Vauxhall TIS and found some test plans for this circuit. The bit that's particularly interesting is, right, I've got some more information on this. Back to the wiring diagram. This is the reducing control module, Adblue control module. This is the engine control module. I've got some information on this wiring here. Basically, the pressure sensor here, as I said before, a 3-wire sensor. It's got a 5 volt reference, it's got a ground circuit, and it's also got a signal wire. Signal wire is basically a pull-up. As we've mentioned before, it's a pull-up sensor, so it pulls from ground, and as the pressure rises, the resistance across the sensor will change and the voltage will start to increase. Now, the connection, basically, it comes via the Adblue control module directly back to the engine control module, and it comes via to these 2 wires here. So we've got from terminal 11 of the Adblue control module, this wire here, the yellow and red, is our 5 volt reference from the engine control module to the Adblue control module, and 13 is the feedback of the signal. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to disconnect the Adblue control module here, and I'm going to bridge with a fused bridge 11 and 13. Now what that should do is that should then push the 5 volts back down through the signal wire, and on the scan tool I should see somewhere close to the 5 volt reference on the scan tool. If I don't see that, then I've got a problem with the wiring between the well, either the wiring between the Adblue control module and the engine control module, or I've got a problem with the engine control module. So that's where I'm going to next. So I've still got the scan tool connected. I've got 0 volts on the circuit, but I have got it disconnected. I've got the control unit disconnected, and this is the plug. This is the wiring harness that comes from the car to the Adblue control module. I'm probed into terminal 13 there, terminal 11, sorry, there, which is the 5 volt feed. I've got it on a breakout lead, and I've got that attached to the oscilloscope. on the blue channel, and as you can see, we've got 5.2 volts, which is good. So now what I've done is I've rigged up a fused link wire, and I'm going to connect that other end of that link wire onto terminal 13. So I've got that linked in there now. Now what it's done is it's pulled that to near ground, 0.02 of a volt, so 20 millivolts. It shouldn't do that. So there's something pulling the 5 volt reference to ground. So it would appear that we've got a short on the feedback circuit from the Adblue control module back to the engine ECU. So back to the wiring diagram. Right, so we're testing here. We've got this plug disconnected and we had 5 volts on pin 11. But once we connected it to pin 13 here, what it's done is it's pulled the whole circuit to ground. So the engine ECU is seeing 0 volts here. Oh. Just, zoom that back in again. Zoom a bit further. There we go. So the engine ECU is seeing 0 volts here, which it should be seeing the 5 volt because I'm bridging it. So we've either got a short to ground between here and here, which is then pulling the whole circuit to ground, or we've got a problem internally in the engine control unit. So I need to identify where this plug is here. This is a connector, which if I click on it, so that connector there, if I click on that, it tells me I've got a connector in the left hand engine compartment. Now beside it, we've got the connectors designated as C03. It's a 40 pin connector, and it's saying -2, so I think that'll be 40 pins with 2 rows. It's a black connector by the colour, so I need to find that connector. We're looking for pins 35 and 36. So let's go and seek that. But first of all, what I'm going to do is on that there, I'm going to check the resistance to ground from pin 13 to chassis ground of the car to see if we have actually got a bridging somewhere on that harness. Right, so I've connected a multimeter up to pin 13, so on pin 13 there, connect the lead there to the multimeter to ground, and I've got a resistance to ground of 66 ohms. So I'm now going to disconnect the engine control unit. With that disconnected, that should then, all of the wiring should be independent of each other, so there should be no connection. So I'm going to disconnect the engine control unit and see if this resistance still exists. Right, so engine control unit disconnected. It's on the scuttle panel. Let's have a look at the resistance in that wire. Resistance to ground, 30 ohms. We've got a short in the wire somewhere. So back to the wiring diagram. So basically what I've identified there is, with this connector disconnected and that connector disconnected, so this wiring is now sitting independent on the vehicle. There's no connections to anything on the vehicle. We still have a path to ground. Yes, it's got a bit of resistance on 30 ohms. So the next point is to find this connector. If we disconnect this connector, I suspect that the problem's going to maybe lie in the connector. If it's not lying in the connector, at least then we'll be able to know if the problem lies between the connector itself and the connector to the Adblue unit, or the connector to the engine ECU. So let's find this connector. Right, so this is the plug on the diagram. We've identified that this is the wire here. That's that wire that comes from pin 13 on the plug with the Adblue module. So to strip the battery out, I've had to disturb a bit to get it out. This wiring harnesses have been moved and what have you. So I'm going to check to see what the resistance is on the circuit now. So this is the plug in question here. And this brown and yellow wire here is the wire in question. I've got my connection back on the ground cable of the car, so that's basically got a connection to the body there. And we'll go around the back and we'll check to see if we've still got resistance, see if we've still got some kind of connection to ground. Yes, we have. We've got 2.2 ohms, so the actual it's getting there. The resistance is reducing on this short, so now I need to find the short, so I'm going to disconnect that black plug and see where it goes from there. Black plug's now disconnected. I've still got my ground connection on. Let's see what the multimeter reads. 2 ohms. So the short is somewhere between the connector to the Adblue module behind the bumper and the engine bay. So this is where the fun begins. Right, so I've moved the meter and I've pinned into the plug at this end, so I'm not running backwards and forwards up and down the car. And I've got the meter on the chassis ground. And if we look at where this harness goes, it goes out here into this harness here, up into this harness here, and then over underneath the fuse box. Now bearing in mind our first fault, when we're moving the car up and down the ramp, this is when we're getting the fault. So that harness is lying against the body of the car, so I'm just going to, no, it's not there. Keep right there. So if I'm wiggling, I've got my hand down here where this harness goes. These crocodiles jumped off. So we've still got the resistance there. So I'll just move that out the way. Try and get the meter in shot as well. So if I grab this harness, grab the other hand here, got an open circuit. I've got a short back here somewhere. I'm moving. So it's where this harness goes under the fuse box and round the back of the ABS pump by the looks of it. So there's going to be some more stripping out to do to see if we can find that. But at least we have an answer to the batshit crazy fault on the Zafira C. This is quite close to the suspension turret. So is this the reason why when we let it down on its wheels we were getting it short? Because that suspension turret would have been flexing when the weight goes back on the car. When we're lifting it on the sills, it'll be flexing a different way. So the fault which has had me scratching me backside, scratching me head, pulling me hair out, I've now narrowed down to a wiring possibly shorting out down by the ABS pump. What I can see there is, it looks like a couple of ground leads down here. So the chances are, I would say, it's shorting against one of them. There's a ground pin down there. As soon as I touch that harness, it's going to open circuit there. As soon as I put the weight back on, we've got resistance again. It's just where it comes round by this suspension turret. So I'm just going to see if I can get the multimeter in shot. At the same time, put that back there. If we can see that. I've got two harnesses. I've got this one here and this one here sitting on top of each other. Get this battery cable out of the way. if I grab that harness, top harness there, and move it away from that one, the fault disappears. Push it back down. So it's basically, I've got two harnesses shorting out here, which is the ABS harness. Got a light in there. It's the ABS harness, and something else in, well, it's a harness that my wire goes through. Slightest bit of pressure I put on this harness, I can get it to go away. And whether I lift the ABS harness out of the way, it goes away. This is so sensitive, this short. It's down there somewhere. It's right down the side of the ABS pump. Looks like I'm going to have to possibly strip the ABS out to get to it. There's the culprit. Better there. Through. Excuse the minging fingernails. Right, this is all back together now. Fixed the wiring. There's the readings we had before. Top one, 0.73 volts on the Adblue pressure sensor, and I'm going to bounce up and down on the car, and as you can see, well, it doesn't budge now, so I'm calling this a fix. Thanks for watching.